What is up, people? Today I am getting into my Jack Ryan 4K series, and I got that coming up for you next. So I've been working on putting this Jack Ryan 4K series for you guys together for a long time. It took some planning on how this video was going to be laid out and how I was going to do it and just be as detailed as possible, but I got it all scripted out and figured out, and this is going to be great. Starting off with the movies itself, with The Hunt for Red October. This movie is truly a great movie that is a lot more atmospheric than the other Jack Ryan films. I feel like this movie, being set in a submarine, gives it a sense of claustrophobia and a sense of atmosphere, and how the camera moves around this submarine. And another thing that I've always found interesting about this movie is that Alec Baldwin's character of Jack Ryan is not the central character here, because this movie focuses on Sean Connery's character, and I love Sean Connery in this movie. His obsessiveness with reaching his goal is truly awesome, and I definitely like the interplay between Alec Baldwin and Sean Connery, with the exception that Alec Baldwin is not the best Jack Ryan. He's not the worst either, but he's definitely not the best, and for that, I would have to give this as a standalone rating a 9 out of 10. This is still a great movie. And with Patriot Games, we get an all-new, older Jack Ryan with Harrison Ford. He's married, he has kids, he is retired, actually, and he just gets sucked back in with this more personal story and the attack on his family. I feel like this movie is, again, very unique in the Jack Ryan series, just because of the fact that this is the one where it gets personal. If you are looking for the more personal story in the Jack Ryan series, one that means the most to him, I would say this is it, because this is the one where the villain goes after his family. And even though it does feel small scale, this is a very grounded, very personal story that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, it's just very small scale. And for that, I would have to give this a 8 out of 10. This is definitely a really solid movie that I actually like more than most people. It, like I said, is just smaller scale. And getting into the bigger scale Jack Ryan movies, again starring Harrison Ford, is Clear and Present Danger. This is the one where Jack Ryan really shows his rebellious side, and he goes after corruption in our government, and even to the toppest levels of our government with the president. And I feel like Clear and Present Danger is really the ultimate Jack Ryan movie, just if you want to see what Jack Ryan should be like and what really he is as a character is, and really the best depiction of Jack Ryan himself is in this movie. And I feel like for that, I would have to give this another 9 out of 10. This is another excellent Jack Ryan movie that is a very good example of what a Jack Ryan movie should be like. And as you get into the Sum of All Fears, now you have your third Jack Ryan with Ben Affleck. And yeah, now we are in the in-between between Alec Baldwin and Harrison Ford. In between that time, this story happens. And this is where the storyline gets a bit muddled. I'm not going to lie. But what I will say is that Ben Affleck isn't as bad in this movie as people make him out to be. He's not exactly great either. He's just serviceable. And I feel like that is a big part of this movie. This movie is just serviceable. It does have a big scale plot with, nuclear annihilation, but it does feel very old school, just with the politics. And hey, you put Morgan Freeman in here, and you're on my good side, because I love me some Morgan Freeman. And for that, I do have to give this a 7 out of 10. This movie is really okay. It's serviceable, and I feel like that is where it rides with the performances and with the plotting and everything. And then we get into our newest film and our fourth Jack Ryan with Shadow Recruit. And now Chris Pine is in the role, and he is the youngest Jack Ryan. So if you are looking to watch these in sequence, which I do not recommend you do, you would watch this one first. This movie has some issues, to be honest with you. While being directed by Kenneth Branagh, I would expect it to really have more of a handle on the characters, but this movie does not. The action in this movie is very unlike Jack Ryan. Jack Ryan is more of a thinker, and, he can throw down when he needs to, but, man, Chris Pine can kick some ass in this movie. And that is one of the big things. This movie just does not feel like a Jack Ryan movie. In fact, what I was drawn into and what I really wanted to focus on here was the interpersonal relationships between Chris Pine or Jack Ryan and his wife Keira Knightley, or more of the Kevin Costner, Chris Pine stuff. But really, I feel like a lot of that gets lost in this movie. A lot. And I feel like this movie has problems with really picking what it should be focusing on and what it shouldn't be focusing on. Because every time they are going to focus on the wrong aspects of what they have here. And for that, I would have to give Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit a 5 out of 10. I didn't necessarily hate this movie, but I was just perplexed by what we are actually focusing on in this movie. And when you collect all Jack Ryan films, put them in a pot and stir for me, you will come out to a 7 out of 10. That's what I will give this entire series. And hey, on an average, that's not that bad. And getting into the video quality for all of these films, with the exception of Shadow Recruit, all of them have 4K scans, so they have a 4K digital intermediate. Shadow Recruit is the newest film, so with that in mind, it had a 2K digital intermediate when filmed, so they kept that 2K digital intermediate here, and they just upscaled it to 4K. And as far as the first three films, The Hunt for Red October, Patriot Games, and Clear and Present Danger, they all look pretty damn similar. All of these films have not only 4K scans, but they also are given Dolby Vision for every single movie in this collection. So these first three are really the softest of the bunch, and that is to be expected just because of the fact that really they are the oldest, but especially with Clear and Present Danger and Patriot Games, those are the softest of this whole entire collection. The Hunt for Red October looks a bit sharper, and it looks like they spent a little bit more time with this movie, but unfortunately, it also has bleeding of reds just because of the harsh red colors that are in the movie as well. As far as HDR and Dolby Vision is concerned, I do feel like for these films, they are really a non-issue. I don't really get a very good sense of Dolby Vision and HDR with these films, and I was kind of disappointed with that with The Hunt for Red October, just because I feel like that could have been a place where they could have straightened out the black and the red levels in that film, but unfortunately it doesn't really look like HDR or Dolby Vision really played into a factor there. But there is a good amount of detail that really isn't in the Blu-rays for all of these three films, and for that, all three films are going to get the same grade of a 7 out of 10. They aren't that bad for how old they are, but they could have been better just with the HDR and the Dolby Vision capabilities. And getting into the Sum of All Fears, this again was a 4K scan, and this is where you start seeing the jump to 4K, people, because this movie is a lot sharper than the older Blu-ray, and it has a lot more detail. I found the skin tones in that older Blu-ray to be kind of hot, and in this film they are actually tempered down. I feel like that's where the Dolby Vision and the HDR kind of help even out the contrast levels. And really, with the explosions, when they do hit around the middle of the film, the HDR and especially Dolby Vision really kicks in, and you get some really awesome visuals when that definitely happens in the film. Now, you add all of the detail that is upgraded here from the Blu-ray and the sharpness, and you get a really solid Blu-ray for the sum of all fears, and that's why I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. And then you have Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit. This film was the newest film, so like I said before, this is actually an up conversion from the original 2K digital intermediate, but this is actually the best looking of the bunch. This movie is razor sharp, and it kicks that off right off the top. And when you look at the HDR and the Dolby Vision and the contrast levels in this film, this is a very blue film with a lot of blue hues, and they really pack a punch with the HDR, especially with the Dolby Vision. I was really impressed with how this looked with the Dolby Vision. I feel like this movie looks really good in 4K. It packs a real hell of a punch, and I would give it a 9 out of 10. So when you add up all my video quality scores for all of the Jack Ryan films, you put them in your stew and you stir it, you will come out to I'll give it an 8 out of 10. And as far as the audio quality here, unfortunately, none of them are upgraded to Dolby Atmos, and that is a real shame. So basically, the Dolby True HD mixes for The Hunt for Red October, Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger, and The Sum of All Fears are all carried over to here, and they all pretty much sound the same. They feel very small scale and very limited, and I feel like upgraded sound would have really boosted all of these. And the surrounds are kind of soft and lacking in all of them, but they do pack a punch when they need to, and there is some pretty good bass response here, along with some good speaker separation, so I would give all of these a 7 out of 10. But with Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit, there is actually a DTS HD 7.1 mix that is on the Blu-ray itself, and that is also transferred to this 4K Blu-ray, and hey, this is an upgrade from the other films. There is a lot more surround work here. This is a lot more opened up and wider and more atmospheric. There is even better bass response here. During the action moments, this sound mix really kicks into high gear, and I generally like this sound mix, but unfortunately it's just not the Dolby Atmos mix that I was kind of hoping for, and for that, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. And when you put those two scores together, you mix it in a pot and stir, you come out to a 7 out of 10 for all of these. They're good. They just should have been Dolby Atmos. And as far as all the digital copies for all these films, they're all iTunes digital copies that you can only get the HD version of on iTunes and not the 4K version. And as far as all of the films from The Hunt for Red October all the way to Sum of All Fears, they all have no special features on any of the 4K discs. They are all on the Blu-ray version, and they all have the same real amount of special features, which is just a audio commentary that is pretty standard, another standard featurette that goes into a very short making of the film, and then they have the theatrical trailers. And as far as Shadow Recruit goes, you get a little bit more special features here and a little bit more of a bonus, just because of if you go into the actual audio settings, you can reach the audio commentary that you can play during the 4K discs. That is where it is. It's kind of hidden, but it is there. And all of the other featurettes are only on the Blu-ray, but there is 3 making of docs that go into in a little bit more depth than the other films, and then you have deleted scenes and theatrical trailers there. If you put all of these together, you would come out to a score for me of a 6 out of 10. I feel like this is pretty standard and just a little above average, just because of Shadow Recruit. And for my last looks at all of the Jack Ryan films, look, I had a lot of fun actually going back and watching all of these films. I feel like I really have a greater respect for them. When I got asked to do this, because I initially wasn't going to, I didn't really have high hopes for these films, just because I saw them when I was a lot younger and I didn't have that much patience for these films. But now, looking back at them, I can enjoy them as just really great thrillers, especially the two with Harrison Ford, Clear and Present Danger, and Patriot Games. I really did change my views on those two films from when I was a kid, and I really did enjoy watching all of these and seeing this character grow over time. And when you add up all my scores for the Jack Ryan collection in 4K, you come out to a 28 out of 40. Some of these differences from the Blu-ray are pretty subtle, but this is a great value that even if you don't decide to actually pick up the 4K versions of these films, just go and watch them at least, just to see the evolution of this character, just because it is pretty cool. And this actually really made me want to watch the Amazon series. So when I have time, I don't know when it's gonna be, but I'll do it. So guys, I do still have to do Jurassic World: The Fallen Kingdom. That's coming up next, and I have a whole lot that just got released, so I am going to be getting to you guys a lot next week. And I thank all of you for watching. You guys are awesome, and you know it, and I will see all of you next time.